Hey guys and girls, it's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. Welcome back. We got the BC Rich clone on the bench. We're gonna start doing some cleanup, mostly paying attention to the kind of the faded paint, and of course we have to get after the frets and the board, mostly the frets. It sat overnight. It's very stable, so after all the work we did, I'm kind of pleased to see that. Let's get to work. I am going to clean this guitar because, yeah, it's pretty faded. It's like red paint been sitting in the desert for 20 years, and it gets kind of orange instead of red. And if you just take a little time with some, that's what I use, but you can use Meguiar's, you can use any kind of really soft compound. This is actually called guitar polish, but it does have a little bit of compound in it. And instantly you can see the difference. I mean, even the camera's picking that up. And all it's doing is taking the oxidation and any old layers of wax, sweat, human DNA, whatever you want to call it. But that's standing tall. So I am not going to bore you with the entire process. I just wanted to show you, what a little bit can go a long way. Now, it's going to take me a while to get all of this done. So you see what that process is. Going forward, I am also going to, now some of you have seen this. These are what I use when I really want to do a bang up job. We are going to first, and there's quite a bit of goo on the neck too, the fret board. But first, we're going to do two-step, just a Scotch-Brite. This one's a little more aggressive because there's a lot of stuff on these frets. And this is only the first step. So, yeah. I mean, it's green. There is even some rust that you can see without even magnifying it or getting close to it. I don't know what, this one's a little more aggressive. This one's ultra fine. And this is just to get the heavy stuff off. This is the first of probably 8 steps I'm going to have to do on these frets. But instantly you can tell the difference of what's going on there. Just getting, is it going to focus for me? You can see the difference right there compared to these over here. So this, I don't have to take the board off because the protector does enough. As I move on to these, I will tape off each individual fret as I'm doing them and then do a 4-step on each one to really, really get after them. And that will make for a long-lasting cleanup and polish. It's fret dressing, And yeah, it's time consuming and it's a lot of steps, but if you don't take the time, especially on an older instrument like this that has kind of languished for a while, now is the time to do it. Get that stuff off of there, because if you only do one step and just, kind of do a really ultra light and just get the goop off, within a couple of weeks, they're going to look green again. Where if you take the time and do it right, one time, once a year, maybe you have to do that. Not even, because once you get them looking good and maintain them, a little clean off and some polish on them, and it's maintenance at that point. Once you let them get to this point, then it's work. So I digress. Like I said, we did a lot of work on this. When I got it, there was nothing in here. There was some electronics in it. All of it I have replaced because I tried to use the electronics that were in it, and it was a fail, unfortunately. We tried to save some money there, but it's not a lot of money to put new pots in. And I donated a five-way switch. So put the bridge in, mounted and wired the entire guitar. We mounted the pickups and mounted all of this and got it wired up. We put in new tuning machines. We plugged old holes in the back. Fortunately, there were already existing holes that accepted these tuners. I don't know why, but it did. And they're working okay. They're not the best. They're not the worst. And that brings us really to clean up and then move on to final setup. It sat overnight for 24 hours since I worked on it yesterday, just stringing it up and doing kind of a mock setup. And I was very pleased this morning, actually this afternoon when I got back to it, and didn't touch it, just plugged in my tuner, strummed it, and then checked the tuning, and it was dead on. It was stable. Brand new strings, and this being set in there the way that it was, it held tune, and that's very encouraging, which means I think we're going to be okay with this instrument. I think it's going to make music, and I think it's going to be stable, relatively stable instrument. So that's all good news. We'll be back. I'm going to get to work on cleaning and polishing, and then we're going to restring and do a setup, hopefully all in this video, so stand by. Okay, so we have gone through with just the two sanding pads, call them what you want, Scotch-Brite, whatever, and the little tool. The next step is, well, the next 100,000 steps, as I will show you, and I'm only going to show you a couple because it is, the elapsed time already is just like an hour, just getting it to this point. And then what I do at this juncture, because I'm really, now working all the way down and over. We're not leveling or anything. This is all fret dressing. And yeah, if you don't do it this way, you're not going to get a good result. This is necessary, especially when, as I said, frets go for a long time and have not been, paid attention to, not played, or just ignored. I have 4 of these, and they start out, first it's coarse, medium, fine, and ultra fine. So I always start with the coarse one, of course. You start 1500 to 1800, and this is even finer than the 2 Scotch-Brites. So by the time I get done, it's going to be 15,000, 12,000. Yeah, so we get to it. And the reason I tape it off is because now the Scotch-Brites with, the fret protector only really gets the top of the fret and about a third over the crown and down to the sides. This tool, this material, can actually get down and start working the rest of it. And you can hear it. It's grinding. And not only that, but you want to get all over the top of it. Yeah. And there's 2 grits on each one. You start with the 1500 one and then go to the 1800 one. And your naked eye will look at that and go, wow, that looks awesome. Well, by the time we get done, it will look awesomer, if that makes any sense. So, on to the next one, which is medium. And you'll notice I'm first doing the sides, and then the tops and around it. And it's just the most tedious work. But if you don't do it, you won't get a good result. Flip it over, use the other side, and you're going to an even finer each time. And take care to round off the edges, your fret ends, because it will only make for a much nicer feel by the time you finish. And when you're working down here close, be careful you're not hitting the paint or the finished surfaces. Yeah. I mean, some guys will go, oh, that's perfect. That's enough. No, I'm going to do them all. Yeah. When you get down to the fine ones, it's almost difficult to tell which one is the coarser one of the two. And you think this doesn't matter? Yeah, it does. And I'm not kidding you. When you get done, you're going to be so happy with the results. I mean, this one just took off some of the most fine scratches that these two left. And then this is really, when you get down to 8,000, 12,000, it's really starting to polish the fret before you even get to the polish part. So you can see the amount of time it's going to take me to get all the way down. That fret is now finished. The last step is going to be using fret polish on it, which I will do after I've done these 8 processes on each fret, get all the way to the end. Then I'm going to go through and polish it with this. And then we're going to clean the board. We're going to scrub the board. And then we're going to oil the board and scrubbing it with a brush and some soap to get all of the DNA off. So you see how long it took me to do just that one fret? Yeah. This is a true fret dressing where you're really paying attention to each fret. And when you get done, this guitar is going to play so smooth and like butter. You won't feel anything. The strings won't catch on any imperfection. And you think they're not there, run your fingernail across them. You'll feel all the little imperfections, and the strings get caught in that. So anyway, I digress. Stand by. I'm going to do this now on all of them, and I'll be back in like 3 days. Stand by. Okay, so we have gotten all the way to the end. Coarse, medium, fine, ultra fine, all the way across. And we're going to take the tape off from the last fret. And then we're going to wash this board because, well, it needs it. Got it all off of there. How do we do that? Yeah. I haven't had to do this in a while, but this is how I do it. There is my brush. So sometimes you see striations underneath the frets, usually going in that direction. And you think it's just coloration in the wood, but it's not really. If you scrape at it a little bit, what it is fingernails, oil, dead skin from your fingers gets transferred to the board, and the sweat and acid glue it to the wood. I'm going to try to demonstrate that a little bit right there on that fret, where you can see where I scraped it off. And you see the striations are on almost every fret. Well, that's not the wood showing wear. It's actually goop on the board from fingers and DNA. Yeah. And I don't like it. I want to scrape it off of there. I want to clean it off of there, I should say. It's a really fine fingernail brush. You just get after it. And I'm not saying get on it, just scrape. And you're going to have to let it sit on there for just a few seconds and loosen it up after the first pass. By the way, use a non-silicone soap. You don't want to put silicone on anything on the guitar. And if that didn't get it, do it again. You'll see it when it comes off. Yeah. Second pass, got it. You'll see it when it comes off. Sometimes it's really bad, and I've had to use, don't be frightened, I've had to use razor blades to get in there, and it was so thick that you had to actually scrape it off of the fretboard. Nastiness. Yup. You're going to see here in a minute just how nasty. And then just wipe it off. Yeah, that's what it is right there. Make sure you get all of this off before you move on to the next step, which is oiling the board. And usually what I'll do is clean it, make sure that there isn't anything left on the board in human DNA, human leftover skin, whatever you want to call it. And just let it dry for 10 or 15 minutes. Let it come off of there. Get it all off. Yeah, some of it's going to go in underneath the frets, but trust me, when we put the oil on there, it's going to be fine. A perfectly clean headstock now is not perfectly clean because that stuff gooped all over it. And a little bit down here too. But you have to do that. When it's bad, you have to do it. Yeah, I don't see anything left. I'm going to pause and let it just dry, air dry for a few minutes, and then we're going to oil it with a little bit of linseed oil. Stand by. So the last step before we oil the board, the last step in polishing all that work that we did on the frets is taking a little bit of polish. I've got these last 8 or 9 frets to do. I already did all the way down to here. Just kind of dab it on. A little dab will do you. And then get to it. And this last step is important because that tarnish comes off. And you're also taking off any sandpaper material. There's static electricity from rubbing the sandpaper on there and polishing pads, what have you. And this white polish kind of facilitates getting all of that tarnish off, as you can see. Try to use a clean part of the rag each time. Yeah, that's what you get. And that's the entire, after you get done, now, lots of goop. get the excess polish off of the board. Remember, we washed the board, and I wanted to do this before we put the oil on, which is the next step, right? So I thought we were going to get the setup today, but wow, hours and hours of really paying attention to this part of the instrument. Linseed oil is what I use. You can use whatever you want, but this stuff is the best. And a little on the cloth, and then you start pushing it into the wood on the fretboard. And when I say push it in, just get it to where it starts to get darker, you know. Just get it on there. The oil will do the work. You don't have to put a whole bunch on, but probably a few applications. And this is also going to condition the wood. And the nice thing about linseed oil is any imperfections or cracks in the fretboard, this stuff will fill it in, and it will actually harden. It will actually harden and become part of the fretboard. Make sure you get an ample amount on there. It's the smaller fretboard parts down here that's hard to get it to work in, but yeah, you see, you can kind of get what I'm doing here. You can use any kind of oil, but this is the best. This is what I recommend. This is what I use. Been putting it on my own instruments and customers' instruments for 100 years. I'm an old man. Not really. Let's just say I'm getting older. And you can see some of the tarnish also comes off, and that's what I mean by conditioning the board. It's going to facilitate pulling even more of that tarnish off. This board, believe it or not, was not that bad. I believe it to be rosewood. It's really quality material on this neck. You don't need to let it sit on there for too long because it wasn't super bad. It wasn't dry. The frets were way worse than the fretboard was. You just kind of work it in. After you apply it, work it in with a dry cloth, rag, paper towel. Yeah, even more tarnish coming off. That's what you want to see. You started down here to take it off. You're going to start up here for the second pass. And this time you really want to kind of rub it in. You're removing and rubbing it in. The wood will accept what it needs. And you should do this about once a year, I recommend. And make sure you're working each side of the fret as you get down here. Up here it kind of takes care of itself, but get down here where the frets are closer together. Yeah. Get a little extra elbow grease on it and really work each side of it. Now, what's the last little part after this 100-step process? One last clean paper towel. Just run-of-the-mill paper towel. You can use microfiber if you want, but it's not necessary. But we're really going to hit every fret one more time. Why? To make sure that all the tarnish is off, and every once in a while check. And if you still have a pronounced line of tarnish coming off, start all over again and do it one more time with the polish and the oil. But we're fine. These things are going to stand tall. Yep. That's it. Standing tall. Those are completed, cleaned, polished, dressed frets and fretboard. You follow? And make sure you clean off your tool before you put it back. Get the polish off. All right. One last little cleanup. Some of the schmutz gets over here, gets up here. I think we're going to call that good for today. I really wanted to string it up and do a setup again on it. I don't think it's going to need much setup because we kind of did that in the first video, and the beginning of this video was, wow, it stayed overnight a day and a half and was completely in tune when I checked it before we did all of this work. Polishing and cleaning, and yeah, pretty much that's what this exercise was. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to do. Most guys will not go through this whole process because of, well, call it what you want, laziness. You can see that the brightness of the body came up everywhere, and clearly we spent a lot of time on these frets. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is, I say it over and over, that's the tactile feel of the instrument right here. And if these frets are not cleaned and polished properly, it's not going to play right, and you're not going to love it. It's Blackjack with 396 guitars. We may have to do a third video just for a final restring and setup on this guitar. Maybe, maybe not. But this instrument is well on its way to going back to the client, and I know he's going to be happy with it. We'll talk soon. Thanks for all your support. If you dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe, and by all means, share.